Have you ever read a poem and just felt something? You know, that powerful feeling like there's something huge happening right under the surface, but you can't quite name it? Well, what you're sensing is the poem's architecture. Just like a building, every poem has a hidden structure, a deliberate design, and today we're going to learn how to see it. I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. Why does a clock go tick-tock and not talk-tick? It just sounds wrong, doesn't it? That's because our language has a natural rhythm, this built-in beat that we understand without even thinking. And poets, well, they are absolute masters of that beat. And this really gets to the heart of it, something the scholar John Stallworthy said perfectly. Poetry isn't just about ink on a page, it's meant to be heard. It's an arrangement of sounds designed for a performance, and that performance, by the human voice, is where the real magic happens. So to figure out how that performance is built, we're going to open up the poet's toolkit. We're going to look at the tools they use, the blueprint, the structure, even the interior design to build an entire experience just out of words. Okay, first tool out of the box, the blueprint. This is the absolute foundation of any poem, and it's all about rhythm and meter, the music and the beat that makes poetry sound so different from just regular talking. So at its most basic level, rhythm is just the pattern of sounds and silences in a line of poetry. It's the drum beat, right? The pulse. It's the tick-tock that gives a poem its energy and flow. It's really the first thing our ears tune into. Now, if rhythm is the general beat, you can think of meter as the architect's specific, detailed plan for that beat. It's how poets measure and organize rhythm into a predictable pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. This is where things get really precise. These patterns are called metrical feet, and they're kind of like the individual bricks a poet uses to build a line. And you can actually feel the difference between them. You have that rising rhythm of the iamb, da-doom, destroy, then the falling feel of the trochee, da-dum, London. You've got the galloping in ampest, da-da-dum, intervene, and the rolling dactyl, da-da-dum, poetry. Poets mix and match these to create whole lines of verse. So for example, listen to this rhythm. I bet you've heard it a million times. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. That classic line from Charles Dickens is built from 5 of those iambs in a row. It's called iambic pentameter, and it's one of the most common and natural sounding meters in English. You can just feel how balanced it is. Okay, so if meter is the blueprint for one single line, how do poets put all those lines together to build the whole house? Well, that brings us to the bigger architectural plans, poetic forms. These are the structures you might recognize, like sonnets or villanelles. Let's take the sonnet. You can honestly think of it like a recipe, or maybe a pre-designed floor plan. It has a strict set of rules. It's got to be 14 lines long. It almost always uses that iambic pentameter we just talked about, and it follows a really specific pattern of rhymes. The poet has to work within those rules to build their poem. And what's really cool is that even within one form, poets have different layouts to choose from. The Italian sonnet, for example, usually sets up a problem or a question in the first 8 lines, then solves it in the last 6. But the English or Shakespearean sonnet, that one builds an idea across 3 little sections, and then bam, it delivers a powerful concluding punch in the final 2 lines. It's all about picking the right structure to get the right effect. So we've got our blueprint and our structure. Now it's time for the interior design. This is all about syntax. It's how the poet arranges the words, the furniture, inside the rooms they've built. And a lot of the time, they do it by bending or even breaking the normal rules of grammar to get the biggest impact. Now, in simple terms, syntax is just word order. In a sentence like, the bird eats the worm, the syntax is pretty straightforward. Subject, verb, object. But poets, they know that changing that order can change, well, everything. So look at what happens when a poet like Edward Taylor gets a hold of this. The standard order, God made a curious knot in paradise, is perfectly clear. But by flipping it around to a curious knot God made in paradise, Taylor shines a giant spotlight on the image of that curious knot. He makes us see that first, and it totally shifts the emphasis of the entire line. Okay, and poets can get really tricky with this stuff. Take this line from Alexander Pope. When you first read it, it's just confusing, right? It barely makes sense, but the meaning is actually locked inside a clever little syntactic puzzle that's describing a scene from Homer's Iliad where gods are getting ready for battle. And here's the key that unlocks the whole thing. Pope uses a slick little device called a zeugma. See that one single verb way at the end, arms? That one word applies to both halves of the line. So it unpacks to this: Mars arms against Pallas and Hermes arms against Latona. It's just brilliant. Pope used syntax to squeeze a whole battle scene into one dense, super powerful line. So let's put our toolkit back together for a second. We started with the blueprint, the rhythm and the meter. We used that blueprint to build the larger structure of a poetic form. And then we arranged all the furniture inside with the careful placement of syntax. And these three tools, the beat, the structure, and the word order, they're not working alone. They're all gears in the same machine. A truly great poet uses all of them in perfect harmony to create that one unified feeling we get when we read or hear their work. And here's the most important thing to take away from all this. Learning about the architecture of poetry doesn't make it less magical. Not at all. It's kind of like learning how a magician pulls off an incredible trick. It doesn't ruin the illusion. It makes you appreciate the incredible skill and the sheer genius that went into creating it in the first place. So the next time you're listening to your favorite song, I want you to listen just a little bit closer. Because song lyrics, they are poetry. And now that you have the architect's tools, what are you going to find? What blueprints, what structures, what clever word arrangements are you going to discover hidden in plain sight?